sometimes you really, really, really look forward to an interview, and this is one of those moments. Zach from Imperial Triumphant joins me. Mate, I know Alphaville, the album that you've just released, is your fourth album. I have to confess, this is the first time that I've come across your band, and I found myself talking to my mate about it for about 20 minutes. And one of the things that fascinated me about what I was saying was that I was referencing cinema as much as I was referencing anything in music. I'd say your albums aren't background noise and are fully immersive experiences. Would you say that's a fair representation of what you put out?
Absolutely, yeah. It's definitely something that we think about as far as the journey the listener is going to go on. It definitely ends up, we're ending up thinking in a cinematic way and sort of thinking about what kind of visuals is the listener going to be experiencing as they're, you know, going through the journey that the sonic journey we create for them.
Yeah, and I really think that your artwork's incredible in album format. Again, going with that immersive thing. Like, I find myself unable to okay, I'll just put this song in a playlist. Not that kind of band. No. Do you think that's fair as well? Do you see, are you a band that fully thinks about entire landscapes and bringing entire worlds to people rather than, I mean, I can't even imagine an ambition being radio or anything like that.
No, yeah, exactly. And I think as pretentious as this might sound, I'd say that we're artists more than we are just musicians. So for us, the creative process doesn't just stop at the music level. We want to fully immerse our listeners in the visual and the aesthetic that we've built in a wide variety of ways, or however we can. And so that's our pleasure.
Yeah, I could totally get that. Like, your aesthetic as a whole is like, would you describe your band as like a how do I like it's the same as I don't want to sound too like pretentious or over egging the pudding, but it feels like Imperial Triumphant brings its own universe to proceedings in terms of how much do you consider the art and the aesthetics when creating the music itself?
That's a great question. I would say it's probably a symbiotic relationship, which goes both ways, where the visual art influences the music and the music influences the visual art. I mean, at the end of the day, we started as a band, so it's always been, the music has been number one, of course, and the influence of Art Deco and New York aesthetic has really played a role in the quality of our music, but also just our music is starting to influence how we present ourselves visually.
It's fascinating. I will get to you about New York in a little bit when it comes to the specific Behemoth show. But to actually explain or try and describe your band to a friend who's never heard you before is a Herculean task. And while there's always extremes, and there's always heaviness, I never felt compelled to use the word metal. I settled on avant-garde heaviness. But where is your relationship with the word metal?
I mean, we're all metalheads. I mean, in addition to listening to a wide variety of other genres, we do listen to a lot of metal, so we do appreciate it. And at the same time, you're 100% right. The focus of our music is not to write metal music per se. It's just we want to create, this very specific, finely tuned horror and like heavy weight that we feel in the city, and it comes out in majority of a metal sound.
Do you feel like, because to me, it feels like there's a real rise for really fucking interesting extreme bands when we're seeing interest and fan base growth for bands like Ulcerate and Inter Armour and Aranci Pazuzu earlier this year got a lot of attention for their record. It feels like a good time for, when it comes to pushing the boundaries of extreme, it not necessarily being how fast and hard you can play, but it's taking extreme music into different terrains, but keeping the extreme aesthetic. Is that something that you identify with?
Yeah, actually, when I was in college, I was learning a lot about the history of music, and I started to realize that was like, okay, the trajectory of jazz and the trajectory of classical music is kind of the same, where it starts very, very primitive and simple, and over either 100 years or decades, it develops more complexity, it's starting to break more rules. And if you look at what jazz and classical have become, they've become very, very avant-garde and very atonal, dissonant forms. And I started thinking, you know what, this is going to be the future of metal. People can only play so fast. They can only play so heavy. Soon they're going to have to start breaking through the gates of tonality and getting more dissonant. And people are going to be open to it, And I appreciate bands like Portal, who have been around since the late 90s, I think, putting out really, really dissonant, disgusting music that probably went unappreciated at the time.
It's fascinating to me that you talk about tonality and jazz and all of those kind of things, because I think your record is one of the best produced albums I've heard. Not just in this year, but in recent years. I know you work with Trey, who used to be in Faith No More and is still in Bungle, and the way that the different instruments pull to the fore when it's their time to. Your music has as much in common with jazz and those scattergun explosions of the mind, but this is where New York also comes into play, because when I think that way, I might naturally go to a like Dillinger Escape Plan style thought process, but this feels far closer to being wrapped up in the darkest moments of Lou Reed's mind than it is anything necessarily straight up in your face ripping.
Yeah, I mean, we share that with Lou Reed and John Zorn and all those cats that, ended up, creating really avant-garde music in New York City. I think it's no coincidence at all. And we're just part of that lineage of artists, from the beginning of this 20th century, just creating, really finding New York City as an inspiration and drawing upon it to express themselves.
Like when people from our culture think of New York City, right? They can go to Kiss and the New York Dolls. They can go to CBGBs and all of the associated New York hardcore bands. What's your New York, Zach?
Mine? I mean, I grew up here, and I never got the chance to go to, any shows at CBGBs, but for me, it's just always been a place of skyscrapers and just a place of immense dynamics between wealth and extreme poverty, and a place where, despite the incredible weight of existence here, like, the quality of life here is much lower than how people feel it is. The one thing that keeps everyone here, I think, is, at least as musicians and artists, is the unbelievable ability to collaborate with other artists in a way that I don't think is really as big anywhere else. Like, it transcends music, but as a musician, you can play with some of the best musicians in the world. You can go see them play. You can collaborate with them. And that's just an experience that I think keeps everyone here, despite all like the kind of urban suffering.
And which takes us neatly to September the 5th, where you're going to be playing a show with Behemoth. Tickets available now at behemoth.live. It's fascinating to me, your visual aesthetic, your presentation. Does an opportunity like this, is this a golden opportunity for Imperial Triumphant to really present their art both visually and musically to the world?
Oh, absolutely. And we were very grateful to be invited to do this show with them, because it is, I think, a huge crossover. And I hope that a lot of the Behemoth fans dig our stuff. And at the same time, you know, Behemoth has been a huge influence on us, not only musically, but also aesthetically. You know, their branding is perfectly curated to who they are. They can be themselves, and it makes total sense. And the level of authenticity is there. And that's why I think partially why they've reached to such a high level of success. And that's very inspiring to me, because despite their high level of success, they're still a very heavy band. You know, they still have blast beats and death metal growls. It's not just like every other top tier metal band that seems more commercially accessible. So that's very inspiring to me.
It's funny to me with Behemoth that, like, I saw them here in LA at the Wilton on I Loved You at Your Darkest, and it reminded me of when I saw Marilyn Manson back home at Brixton Academy on Antichrist Superstar, both in terms of where they were in terms of their budget and what they could deliver with that budget with brilliant ideas. So you're playing the Slipper Room as part of this, and while Behemoth are going to be playing something that looks like a black mass in a punk church, what can you tell someone who has never visually seen your band before about what they're going to see on September 5th?
I'd say, you know, we're just doing our thing. We're going to play this, you know, avant-garde death metal meets Miles Davis style of music, and it's going to be in an old Lower East Side cabaret club, the way it's been for decades now. You know, just keeping it authentic to ourselves and true to New York.
I love that because of the font on your album and like all of these little things that bring us back to New York City when it comes to this performance. But to someone who is literally just seeing you for the first time at home in a t-shirt, the visual presentation of Imperial Triumphant, the robes, the majesty, where does that come from? And I never see anyone, when people go into extremes with their image, the word gimmick always appears, right? But I have not seen that applied to Imperial Triumphant. Why do you think that is?
I mean, I think it's because gimmick has a negative connotation. Personally, I don't give a shit. You can call the masks a gimmick. They totally are, but they're a gimmick that works because it pulls you in. It makes you more interested, and we have the music to back it up. It's not like a cheap trick or something. So I don't. Even if they did call it a gimmick, that's no problem. You know, we're trying to visually present our music. That's what the masks stand for. That's their purpose, so that you're not only listening to what we're playing, but you're also seeing what we're playing.
That is the sound of your music goes with that look perfectly. Because again, when I think about how I have been describing Alphaville to people, it's like a Dave Lynchian nightmare in audio form. It's like the last scene in Rosemary. It's like drowning in the last scene, Rosemary's Baby, for an hour, right? Like that look and that feel. And I haven't seen your band live, so this is literally going to be the first time that I've seen your music and your visuals come together at once. I cannot wait, Zach. And I can't recommend to everybody out there who hasn't heard Alphaville yet, if you want one of the year's most challenging, interesting records, this is it. And is it killing you to be getting so many people interested in Imperial Triumphant, maybe for the first time, but more eyes and ears than ever, and to be in the situation that we're in?
Absolutely. I mean, at the same time, you know, who knows? Maybe that's part of the reason why people dig it so much, is because we're in this dystopian present, and that's kind of the whole vibe of the album. So like, maybe it works like that. I don't know. There's only one reality we have, so I don't waste my time thinking about what could have been and all that. We just keep looking forward to the future, and yeah, the reaction has been so great anyway that I'm just happy to be, to have people enjoying what we've worked so hard on.
Absolutely. I can't. So make sure you've got your tickets. Behemoth.live is the time and place for that, September the 5th. I'm going to continue talking to you about the record, if that's all right, because
Sure,
it has been my late night album for about the last 2 months that I've had it. Your relationship with Trey, how important was it to get someone that speaks fluent weird?
Well, he approached us about doing the becoming our producer on the record, because we had no intention of getting a producer. But when he, said, "I'd like to produce your album," it was a no-brainer. Of course, the guy knows exactly what he's talking about, what we're talking about. It's a shared mind experience, and that's exactly how it went. Like the mixing process and everything was just so smooth, and every idea that he brought to the table was, okay, that's a great idea, let's put it in, So it was just an incredible experience to work with someone so like-minded and creatively productive.
And what was the experience like when it came to your ideas, Trey's ideas, and what Thomas Hacker from Meshuggah brings to the record? Because there is a mind-bubbling moment in the middle of the record where the drum tones are off the scale. That moment, what was it like to be in the studio crafting that within your record? Was it as exciting for you to put together as it is for the listener? Because on an album stuffed with highlights, it really does stand out.
Thank you. Yeah, definitely. There was definitely a few moments when we were creating, whether we're tracking or mixing, where we were starting to feel like, okay, this is starting to feel pretty special. Like this is not just another record. This is feeling like, we're hitting all the green lights. Everything that we're trying to do is working out perfectly. And then also just the experience of writing a song in your rehearsal space and then getting to see it come to life with all the additional elements, like, guest artists and the mixing process. It really transforms into this new beast, and that is a great feeling as well.
There's a bit of a double-edged sword in the present moment when I think of Imperial Triumphant. And one is that this record was written and recorded before the current situation that we're in. So on the one side, it feels like your art, if you were to be creating right now, like could only lend itself more to the current times. The flip side to that is your art sounds like people in a room feeling it out rather than, hey, I've got this riff and let's build a song around it. Have you tried creating more Imperial Triumphant during this whole lockdown period?
Yeah, I think that all of us are kind of working on stuff on the side, and whether it's coming up with like an idea or a theme, or just coming up with a concept for a song. I think that's equally important, is when you're writing a song, knowing what it's about, or what is your song, what are you going to sing about? What's the name of your song? I think sometimes you just get the name of a song, it could end up leading you down a path that writes the whole song itself. So there's many different ways that we compose and write, and all of them lead us towards different results.
Like I love hearing this shit. I love hearing. I love hearing unfiltered, non-cynical, not searching for an algorithm art being created, and the process around it to me is fascinating. Do you think that there's place for bands at the more avant-garde end of things, at the higher seats of the table, right? Behemoth to me has been quite fascinating because they've taken extreme metal to places that I've never seen before. I've seen them having festivals to people with 20,000 people at least at them in Europe. I've seen them play the same arena that Travis Scott plays here in LA when supporting Slayer. Do you think that, are you bothered at all by size and how far you can take Imperial Triumphant?
Why would I be bothered?
Why would you be bothered? Because some people measure success in numbers and some people measure success by what they've created. And some people want both of those things or nothing at all. So I wondered where on the sliding scale of that Imperial Triumphant fit in.
I'd say that, it's two things. One is we're all professional musicians by trade. That's our, before COVID, we were just playing gigs in the city, jazz gigs, swing gigs, blues gigs, whatever. So the MO is definitely, one of the MOs is definitely filling up the bank account. That's important. The other thing is when you get to bigger levels, you get bigger budgets for production, and that's all opportunities for creative output. So if we can get to a bigger level, then we can put on a better rock show, and that's most important for when it comes to playing live, is putting on a killer rock show. And yeah, if you want to have the coolest, production, you got to have the money to do it, and you got to have the ticket sales to do it, and that's all very important. And it's all very inspiring to see bands that are very extreme make it to those levels and be able to do really wild shit on stage. Why not?
Agreed. I totally agreed. Totally agreed. And I feel with that comes with some extreme bands, there's always this slight worry about everyone wants them to be a tiny band that lives in their back pocket.
Yeah, of course.
I think. Yeah, I think
one band nobody knows about, and you name drop it, and everyone goes, "Whoa, that's fucking crazy." Of course, that's cool, but it's not cool if you're the band.
So true, man. So I wanted to the last thing I really wanted to kind of really delve into on Alphaville is it feels so limitless, like in terms of its ideas and its scope and its scale and where it's willing to go. Have you ever stepped into a terrain that hasn't felt right yet? Creatively, have you ever tried to go into zones that haven't worked yet? And I do emphasize the word yet.
Not so much. The only things that really end up on the cutting floor are like ideas that are maybe not really crazy enough. It's a very creative process when we all write together. So if someone, and it's usually me, who comes in with an idea that's a little too close to what everyone else is doing, then there's a lot of help and a lot of ways that we can think, okay, let's retweak this riff. Let's make it crazier. Let's do something that's not predictable. And I think, yeah, as far as inspiration goes, it doesn't feel like we've hit any walls yet. We're still very inspired.
It's really refreshing to hear someone talk about the world existing around them, because everyone pulls the line, we don't pay attention to what other bands do, when everyone does. If you listen to music in general in a contemporary form, you're paying attention to what other bands do.
Yeah, man. I hate when bands say shit like, we don't care what other people think. And it's like, if you didn't care, then you wouldn't put it out. You would just record it and never show anyone. Like, obviously you care and you want people to like it. It's a great feeling when people like your music. It's just natural human nature.
Absolutely. And so you were talking about gigs that you play in the city. So what other collectives have you been part of in recent years? Like you mentioned jazz, swing, like what is your life like as a musician outside of Imperial Triumphant? And how much of that do you bring into Imperial Triumphant?
I mean, for the last maybe 5 or 6 years, I've been a full-time musician where I was just, playing jazz show gigs, wedding gigs, lots of blues lately as well, and lots of swing, gypsy jazz stuff, just at restaurants and hotels. And that's kind of like the musician hustle in the city. And I know that my bass player, Steve, has been doing that for way longer on the keyboards. And then Kenny Grahowski, he does a ton of that stuff as well, but he's also in a lot of bands with, John Zorn and Brand X, and doing a lot of touring. So we're all very busy, and the hustle is very real.
It's just come to me again. Like when someone sent me your record and was like, I said what I thought about it and everything that I've said in this chat. And then he was like, yeah, and they're a 3-piece. Like, even you, yeah, just like the Police and Green Day.
Hendrix or Motorhead, like, so many great trios,
It's true as well. But it's the level of power and sonic shit that's going on that makes Imperial Triumphant feel like an army and not a 3-piece. Fascinating to me, man. Like, is it shared writing duties?
Yeah, sure. I mean, each song is different. Like I said, some songs are completely written by one member, and they'll come in with charts like this kind of shit, like just. Like sheet music, and we just learn it, and that's one way. And then sometimes it's in the rehearsal studio, just with like an idea or a concept, and the whole song will grow out of that. So it really just is on a case by case basis, and I think that's the best way to create, is have no limits on what works.
The perfect place to end this chat. Zach, thank you so much for your time today. If you are listening to this and you haven't heard Alphaville, go and listen to it. And a lot of what we have said today will make a lot more sense. It is something that has to be heard to be believed. Thank you so much for the music, and thank you for your time, man.
My pleasure, man. Thank you so much.
Don't forget to like and share this video, and join me on Twitch every Tuesday, Friday and Saturday for guest hangouts, new music votes, tier lists, band-specific competitions, weekly merch roundups, and much, much more. That's twitch.tv/Mosh Talks. Find the link in the description below. Don't forget to subscribe to this channel, and I'll see you on KNOTFEST.com for all of the latest news, features, and much more from the worlds of rock, metal, and beyond.